Welcome to EVONA Origin Stories, the space podcast where we bring you extraordinary leaders from within the sector as we explore their fascinating stories of early life, career, and how they broke into the space industry. This week on the podcast, we're joined by Mike Cassandra, co-founder and chief culture officer of RocketStar. Based in New York, RocketStar are rethinking space travel from the inside out, and they're starting by improving the engines that power us to space. With a strong focus on reusability, reliability, and minimizing cost, their revolutionary Aerospike engines combine efficiency and power, providing between 25 and 35% more thrust over conventional rocket engines, without using the extra fuel to do so. Mike is passionate about cultivating a company culture that brings people with a genuine passion for space exploration together. We discuss the importance of inclusion in a company's mission to build a strong and diverse team, as well as the many non-technical roles that the space sector has to offer.
Hello.
Hi,
Hi, how are you?
I'm doing all right. How
Glad
about
to
yourself?
hear. Yes, me too, thank you. Yeah, Mike, really excited to be speaking with you today. So I know you reached out to our marketing director, Adele, about a
Mm.
piece of writing we've done about diversity and inclusion. So it's nice to hear that we've kind of got some aligned kind of thoughts and values that we can discuss today.
Yeah, that's actually I'm we're we're a very small company right now, and I'm in the middle of setting up our HR department. And so that's something that I've been talking a lot about, especially the past 2 months. It's been Black History Month here in America, and now it's International Women's Day just passed. And so there's a lot of opportunity to really kind of talk about that end, but you guys went into a lot more detail with a lot of stuff that I've been kind of sharing with some industry friends who didn't take any of that into account. Um, like your stats on disability, disabled workers in the aerospace sector, people didn't really think about that.
Thank you. But that's really good to hear. That's kind of well, it's a desired effect that we had, really. I think that's kind of the whole thinking behind splitting Project IDD into how we did into the first one was talking about gender, but then we actually split it. Part three is coming out soon. But we split it into visible and invisible diversity because that's something that is really interesting that there's so many types of diversity and there's so many kind of diverse characteristics. And it's interesting to kind of put them into the visible and the invisible and to kind of analyze it from that way because, there's so many other, it's like diversity of experiences for a variety of reasons, whatever experiences people have had that have kind of like shaped their life, skills, personality, backgrounds, things like that, as well as, the visibly diverse characteristics, which I think a lot of people get quite hung up on and they think, okay, I need to be more diverse. And then it ends up being, well, it's tokenism really when people are strategically hiring to seem visibly diverse. So yeah, we've kind of wanted to, like you said, just kind of post things that other people maybe not hadn't had thoughts of before. So glad to hear that you learned something new.
Yeah, and it was, like speaking to what you just said, the the tokenism is a bigger issue when there's not inclusion, and your article spoke to that a lot, because if there's not an inclusive environment, then the couple of people who are going to stick around end up becoming kind of tokenism, even if that wasn't the intent, because
Exactly.
you're not really growing that population. You're just kind of filling slots to have those slots filled. Um,
Yeah.
when you were just talking about differences of background or experience, um, one of the other areas that I've been looking into recently, as we start to gear up toward being able to hire more people, is trying to look into hiring those who, and I don't know how it works over there. Unfortunately, I'm still working on international labor law, but um, in America, there's a big problem with those who have a criminal record. and unable to find jobs, and that leads to recidivism, and then they're back in jail, and it just becomes this ugly cycle. And that's an area that I'd really like to tap into when we start to hire, is to try and find a way to help some of those people into new careers that they would have never imagined. I'm going to be in the space industry, but not
Yeah.
not every job in a company like ours that's building rockets has got to be an engineering kind of job. We're going to have people who do like entry level stuff, and why not those people? And also try to get with some nonprofits and find those who are houseless, and
Mm.
offer them a position and try to get them back into society. And that's another part of diversity that it never really gets touched on, is that kind of background.
Yeah, completely. That's really interesting. I know we've covered a lot of angles, but that's something that maybe we should look further into. Like you said, people with kind of criminal records. That's really interesting. I'd love to hear more about that really from you guys, because I know you're working on a company culture book. Am I right?
Yes, yeah.
That's really interesting. So what more can you tell me about that? I've seen a few bits of kind of across the internet and on social media of you kind of referencing it. I'd be really interested to kind of hear what that entails.
Yeah. So there's something that culture decks are kind of a product of the tech industry. The big example when they started to catch on was Netflix. Netflix put out their culture deck, and they didn't just introduce it to their prospective employees, they put it out to the public, to everyone, with the mindset that the public is potential employees. And they kind of set out the ideals of, this is our values, and this is how things work, and this is how we promote, and this is how we retain talent. And it was really kind of cool to go through like all the companies that have followed suit and see how they've done so. Zapdos, this shoe company, is another one a lot of people point to. And so I kind of wanted to get something similar for us, for when we start to hire, because I'm one of the three co-founders of the company, and so I'm very protective of our company and what we've built. And it's we're still very small, so it's very close knit. And we really wanted to put out this idea of, this is who we are and what we stand for, and this is the kind of people that we want to bring into the company, and have that out there, um, to the public and to prospective employees, so that they know what they're getting into. Um, and part of that is to kind of weed out people who don't really believe the ideas that we believe. Um,
Mm.
and that's not to say it's like a political idea, but we're in this for science. We're in this for exploration. We're in this to push the limits of what space can do. And if you're looking for a paycheck, that's fine, but that's not really who we're looking for,
Mm.
because we're going to enable you and to do these things, to explore these new areas, to push into new forms of transportation and how space can affect people's lives. So we want people who are passionate about it, um, and that's part of what the culture book is for, is just recruiting, but also to let people who are interested in our company know how we work. Whether that's potential VCs or people who just want to follow us, and support what we're up to. It kind of just opens it up and lets people have this transparency into what RocketStar stands for and how we're going to get there.
Yeah, absolutely. I think transparency was, well, as you're speaking, that's kind of the word that was going through my mind. You've hit the nail on the head there, really. I think that is so, what you've just said, I think is so reflective of kind of like a lot of modern space organizations where, as you said, it's not just about the paycheck, it's about this shared vision and the shared passion for kind of exploration and being, it's to us, I think when you're in this kind of work, it is, I know you could say this across all industries, but it's more than, as you said, it's more than just a job. It's kind of, it's more than just a paycheck. It's something so enormous that you're involved in. And as you said, I think if you're working on company culture, it's so important to have people that share that vision and are going to be part of this collective entity and this team that is cohesive and excited and proud, I think, to come to work every day to see how far we can kind of push the boundaries of what's possible.
Well, it's funny you say proud because that's what our CEO Chris he says that a lot. He talks about how he wants to create a place where people are actually proud to come to work because they know that they're working on, even if it's something small, even if you're in, like filing or you're in text processing or you're still part of this company and this company is doing these big things and you're part of what's making that happen. Because we don't ever want anyone on any level to feel like they're not part of the success that we make. If we get a launch off, those people who are doing the filing, they've helped make that launch happen. The people who are in logistics who like never, see the offices that we're in, and the people who are in the offices who never see the production lines where those people are still helping each other out. There's still a cohesiveness there. And if any one of those groups was missing, the launches wouldn't happen. And so they're all part of it. And we want everyone to come to work every day feeling like, hey, when that launch happens, I helped make that happen because they did, you know?
Mm. Yeah, absolutely. I think, it's down to the tiniest bolt, the smallest screw, someone, as you said, in an office, but maybe that's slightly separated from yours. It's this the coming together of the kind of these diverse skills that people have and what they bring to the table. And it's so nice to see as well how that is more and more becoming a collaborate. And well, not that it hasn't always been this, but more emphasis is being placed on the fact that this is both technical and non-technical skills. And I think that again is opening the sector up to a lot more people in terms of, thinking that it's restricted to engineers and rocket scientists and astronauts. I think it's nice to kind of let people know that there's a place, if you want to work in marketing, if you want to work in operations, if you whatever you want to do, you could be doing it for a space company, regardless of your skill.
Yeah, that's another thing I've talked about a lot lately at a couple of the events we've been to is, everybody focuses chiefly on STEM. They're like, okay, the STEM program is the way to get into aerospace. It's the way to get into the space industry. And I'm not going to disprove that. That's obviously true. That's a vast majority of the jobs. But there's a huge sector of jobs in the space industry that really don't get the spotlight. And there are ways that people could be part of this that they've probably never thought of. Um, my nephew is in college for art right now. And I was talking to him. I was like, art is a way into the space industry. And he kind of looked at me like I was crazy, but I was like, we have every company has a website. They need graphic designers. Every press release normally comes with photos and graphics on it now. So there's a way into there. Everybody has a mission patch that they need design. Every company has to have a logo that they need design. And it just goes on and on. There's all these different artistic aspects, and that's just, like in drawing and graphic design. There's also videography and cinematography and video editing because, we put out PR packages and we live stream launches, and so there's all this, that aspect of it that goes into it. But then there is marketing. We have a sales and marketing division, and we have to have that. And one of the biggest things that I see lacking in the space industry is proper communications. There's not enough people with real communication skills that are able to engage the public these days. Just unfortunately, the space industry basically relies on like Neil deGrasse Tyson and Bill Nye, and those are like the crutches to explain stuff to the common person, but they're not for everyone, and they're not reaching all the audiences. And so that's one of the issues, is that people don't know that they can get into space in these other avenues because there's no one out there actively communicating this to them that they can engage with and follow and be like, oh, they're right. I can be part of this because here's, example X, Y, and Z, and I learned about it through this person. And there's nobody like going to schools and doing these talks really. Um, it's all STEM focused, and that's, like I said, that's obviously valuable, but we should also kind of open it up a little further, because STEM is very intimidating for a lot of people still, and that could also be communicated better. We had more people in the communications field, but they need to know that they can have these other options and still be a part of what we do. Um, it doesn't need to just be math and science and engineering, because like I said, that's still intimidating for a lot of students, and that's not really exciting for a lot of people. But you that's not the only path.
Absolutely. I think that's you're completely right there. And that's why I think it's, I think we should be maybe using the acronym STEAM more. It's something that I honestly wasn't aware of until I kind of started working for EVONA, and it's science, technology, engineering, arts, and
Mm-hmm.
mathematics. And it's very interesting you should say this, because on the last episode I hosted, we had Christina Court, the astronaut wrangler, and Nicole Stott, NASA aquanaut and astronaut on. And we kind of did a diversity and inclusion special. And Christina said
Mm-hmm.
something which she said is not very popular. And she said the STEM movement was a mistake. And she says that at conferences, and it gets some gasps. And at first I thought, oh, but then I thought about it, and I completely understood what she meant, and that it's really we put so much emphasis into the STEM movement, and we're saying yes, science, technology, engineering, maths. That's the key route into it. But it's, as you said, there's so many other ways to get into the industry, and as well so many other ways that we can kind of promote it. This is something that I really want to get into with you, but I realize we've gone straight into it. So much to talk about. I think I know, right straight into the grit of it. But I think quickly now maybe would be a good chance to, because you've got a very interesting, we can already tell from the conversation that we've had so far, you've got a very interesting role within the sector. I've not actually spoken to anyone
Mm-hmm.
on the podcast yet that kind of looks at things so specifically from this perspective. A chief culture officer is a very interesting job title. So, and I think kind of the one of the motives of the podcast is to highlight, kind of as in the name, the origin stories. So I'd be really interested to know what kind of brought you to where you are today, like with these passions that you have, and the change that you're trying to exact in the industry. So I'd be really interested to kind of hear about your early life, kind of where you grew up, school, college, and then how you found your way into your career.
Yeah, no problem. Yeah, we kind of did get right into it.
We've done it
Um,
backwards. Oh, I'll switch up the structure a bit. Nothing wrong with that.
so yeah, I grew up in a town in upstate South Carolina. It's called Greenville, and it's not really a city, but it's not a small town by any means. Um, and so, that was where I lived the majority of my life. I'm in New York now, and my parents are originally from New York, but they moved down there way before I was born. Um, so I've always had New York connections, and I kind of just moved my way back here later in life. So school there was a very mixed bag. Um, Education in South Carolina isn't funded very well. It's still one of the lower states in the US as far as education goes. Um, and the districts I was in, unfortunately, were also not funded very well. So my elementary school, uh, up to age 10, was fantastic. Uh, it was an award-winning school in the state. They focused a lot on nature and science. At the school, we raised chickens. We had an apiary where we sold honey that was, you know, created there at the school every year. There was a saltwater.
Wow.
Yeah, it was really cool. And a lot of this was one student's dad. He was like a volunteer at the school and he took care of a lot of this stuff. Um, but it was really cool. There was a saltwater aquarium and we had sharks and sea anemones and like so as a kid who was already into science, my very first career when people were like, "What do you want to be?" was Ghostbuster. That was I've always kind of been in that science realm. That school was great, and it really, fostered all these passions that I had, and I got into a lot of stuff there. And then, unfortunately, both of the schools following that were not. They were again very poorly funded schools. They were known for having a lot of discipline problems, and I fell into that discipline problem area. I got kind of disillusioned with school kind of quickly in those areas. Um, and so I did a lot more self-study. I did have a couple of great teachers. There were some fantastic teachers in my middle and high schools, but most of it I just quit paying attention. My
Mm.
grades slipped. I just wasn't there to impress anybody anymore, and I wasn't learning as much as I wanted to learn. So I kind of just quit paying attention until I graduated.
Mm.
And that was unfortunate for me. That really set me back quite a bit. I didn't go to college right away. I wasn't concerned with college. I didn't end up going for 6 years after I got out of high school. And I
Mm.
didn't finish because college ended up being the same. I got very disillusioned. I wasn't able to take courses that I wanted to take and I was qualified to take just because it was in a program that I wasn't in, uh, which was just discouraging because, if you go to school and you want to learn something and you're excited to learn it, and then you're told no, it really kind of takes you out of wanting to go anymore. And that happened to me. And so, a lot of my beginning is just work. Um, I was in the workforce right out of school, and it was a lot of blue collar jobs. I did a lot of customer service and sales and retail, and I worked for UPS and logistics for almost a decade, and became a certified barista, and I ran a coffee shop, and I've done like 1,000 things.
Mm.
um, and one of those was working at a comic book store here in New York when I first moved here. So I needed work pretty quickly, and I'm a big nerd, so I was like, okay, work at the comic shop.
Sounds
And
perfect.
well, it ended up being perfect because that's how I got into space.
Oh,
There
that's
was
great.
one of my coworkers was leaving, and we were having a going away party. And at the party is where I met our CEO, Chris. Um,
Ah.
and he and I quickly found out that we both had a big love of physics. That's what he went to college for. And I've always been kind of an armchair physicist, as it were. And so we spent the whole night talking about space and physics and science and kind of ignored the party. And and that's where our friendship kicked off. And as we kind of got to know each other over the next couple of months, he let me in on this idea for a company that he had and that he'd been thinking about starting. And he introduced me to our third partner, Dave. And we all got to talking and we were like, well, we think we can do this. And so initially, when we started RocketStar, I was brought in to do our social media, um, because I had previously worked on the social media campaign, for another organization, this young female scientist here in, well, yeah, she's still here in New York, the RockStar anthropologist. And I was doing work for her, and then they were like, okay, so you know the social media side, you can start on doing that. And that was my kind of entry into the company. Um, and that's what I did for a long time because we didn't really have funding yet. So there wasn't really, anywhere to go. Um, and then about 2 years ago, we really started to pick up some steam. And Chris was like, hey, man, you're a co-founder of the company. You can't be the social media guy all the time. Like you need to think about where you want to be in the company, like what's important to you. And for me, that's always been worker advocacy because I've worked in these jobs where you're not appreciated and you're not treated well by the customers or the corporate level, all your bosses, and HR is like non-existent. And so I really started to look into that and I was like, okay, well, what do I want to do with that? And that became HR. I was like, okay, I can do HR. I'll start standing that up. Um, and then Chris was like, that's cool, but you should still think bigger. Like we're going to have somebody run HR at some point. So what are you going to do when we hire that person? And so I started looking around for titles that I thought would fit what I wanted to do. And that's how I came across Chief Culture Officer, because that puts me over a lot of aspects of the company that I feel are important. Obviously, writing the culture book, trying to establish the culture of the company from day one. But it also, I've under my umbrella, I've kind of included HR and social media and our community and school outreach programs. And so I'm kind of creating what is the voice of the company for the public, and also the way that we interact with the public, whether it's through schools or the events that we go to or events that we host, um, through the hiring, through HR, through the way that we interact with our employees. And and doing that, I obviously have to recognize the extreme amount of privilege that I have. I don't have the degrees that most people in aerospace have. I don't have the pedigree that a lot of people in a C-suite could have. And because of that, because I recognize how privileged I am, that's one of the reasons I've been so focused on diversity and inclusion, is to help those people who aren't ever going to have that easy path that I took. I realize that, I'm in an incredible position and it's a lot of luck that got me there. I just happened to meet the right people at the right time. Um, and it's important for me to then turn around and make it easier for people to come behind me, because they're not in that position. They're not going to have the ability to move, to a city this expensive and just happen to run into someone that gets them into space. Uh, and that's part of our education outreach. I want to eventually create a pipeline back to the school district I'm from and give those kids, a path and be like, this is how you can get into space, and eventually have it so that we can offer them jobs, once they get through school. Is my kind of a way to give back to that area, because nobody that I ever went to school with thought about going to space. That wasn't a thing. A lot of people I went to high school with, they're still working the job that they worked in high school, unfortunately.
Yes.
So it'd be incredible to be able to go back and be like, hey man, I can get you guys out of here. Like there's ways to move forward and to get into these big industries that you didn't ever see yourself in.
Yeah, absolutely. Like that is an incredible, incredible story. I wish I could go back in time and make my parents enroll me in the first school you went to with the saltwater aquarium and the beekeeping. Wow, that is incredible. I can really see how that would ignite a passion for, for kind of science, technology, and all these kinds of things, giving people such a hands-on experience. And this is such a key point really that we're talking about now, and it's one of the main motives really of us starting the podcast is to make space accessible to everyone and to demystify the space sector. And as we've said, more needs to be done at a younger age across STEM, and as we've said, I suppose STEAM level, to make sure that we're ensuring that the sector has the talent it needs to thrive in the future. Um, I'd love to know, kind of, to dive into this a bit further. What do you think we could be doing differently? I know we've gone over this briefly, but I would love to know in more detail, like, if you had this chance, what do you think we could be doing differently across the industry at these younger levels to impact change now and for the future of the industry?
Well, excuse me.
Okay.
There's a lot of change that's already happening. Um, I'm fortunate to have seen and met over the past couple of years a lot of very passionate young people who have started their own programs, who saw the need to fill that gap that maybe the schools weren't able to fill, or that the community wasn't really able to sponsor. And that's fantastic. But I really feel like we need to, like I said, invest in those communicators and get into these schools like on a personal level, if possible. Whether it's more speaking engagements, whether it's more of a way to like sponsor some of these schools that don't have the funding, or to sponsor field trips. Because, like you said, we push STEM and to an extent STEAM, but the schools here really just teach to pass tests in a lot of
Mhm.
situations. And if you're just getting these subjects drilled into you in order to pass these tests, you're not going to be passionate about it. And so, it'd be very beneficial to these kids and to the industry to have a way to engage them that shows them, that it's fun and that you can actually make a real career out of this, and that it's not just, drilled subjects that are I'm trying to think of what I'm yeah, we need to engage them in a way that really communicates to them on their level, and inspires them. It's not just you need to learn this because it'll make money, or you need to learn
Mm.
this because you'll pass this test, or this is the field that's going to be big when you grow up, so that's why you should be in it. It When you say
Yeah.
that to kids, it doesn't inspire them. Like it's cool to to like get them thinking about the future that way, but it's not really a viable way to get them engaged, because kids can't see long term like that. Telling them that field is going to be making money when they graduate, that does nothing. Like
Mm.
they're going to forget that very quickly. But
Yeah.
if they're actually into it and it becomes like a hobby or a passion, or like we said with STEAM, if they take these artistic routes or these marketing routes, and they see that, like, oh, I love talking to people, what I can take my love of talking to people and turn that into a job in space. Okay, that's I didn't see that coming, but let's see how that works. And we can get them involved in these ways that aren't scary and aren't forced, kind of,
Mm,
you know, like
yeah.
it's really hard to think about because my kid is already 21, and so I'm kind of out of touch with the younger kids that we're talking about. I haven't been in their classrooms in quite a long time, but I really feel like the STEAM aspect of it could open that avenue up a lot instead of just focusing on the hard STEM aspect.
Yeah,
Um,
I completely agree with you. I think it's about, like you said, it's kind of going back to kind of what we said about transparency earlier. It's about, inspiring young people with an accurate and comprehensive overview of when we're talking specifically maybe about the space sector and getting, young people inspired in that way. I think it's about, yeah, like I just said, giving an accurate reflection of the sector and what you can do, but also to broaden that to include these other kind of roles within it and the other avenues that you can explore, because that wasn't something when I was in school that was promoted at all. I felt, if anything, I felt alienated by these subjects because I wasn't necessarily a very mathematical or scientifically minded person. I was always more kind of with the words side of it and the more artistic side. And no one ever. I found out by myself that I could work in the space sector. So I think it's yeah. So hopefully we can, kind of have that level of transparency and honesty and engagement in these communications, like you said. And I think that's kind of what we're trying to do here. And there's something that this leads me on to in the interest of transparency and kind of communicating the truth to young people. Something that we like to touch on here is kind of failures and achievements, strong word, but it's speaking specifically about young people and the kind of portrayal that they receive of things. Often, we as society, and especially younger people, it's everything. They get a lot of their information off social media, and this is a very warped kind of perception when when they're looking at individuals who are talking about their own success. Let's keep it specifically within the space sector. Say, people are promoting the highlights of their career and the successes and the achievements, but people aren't often honest about the kind of work and the sacrifices that led up to that. So, yeah, as I said, in the interest of kind of transparency on these subjects, in your career, what would you say has been your biggest kind of learning curve to date? What you did end up learning from it, and on the other side, what is your biggest achievement in your career to date?
um, well, learning curve is kind of a tricky term to use there, I guess. Um,
You threw that one in there as opposed to failure. I thought I'd lighten it up.
oh no, it's okay. I'm not, we don't feel any kind of fear toward failure at RocketStar. That's an inevitability of space. Nobody's going to get it right. First time, nobody's going to get it right every time. SpaceX is super reliable, and they're still having problems, even as
Mm.
as as big as they've gotten at this point. Um, yeah, the if we're going to use that word, let's just go ahead and jump into failure.
Take away its power.
Yeah, our biggest failure, we actually posted to social media. It's a video. You can go see it. It's on our YouTube channel as well. And that was last year when we had to scrub the launch of our new launch vehicle, the Cowbell. Um, we'd been working on it for about 2 to 3 years at that point. We'd sank a lot of money into it. Um, a lot of our investors are friends and family, and they believe in us. They've been supporting us this whole time, and it was our biggest vehicle so far. It's 34 feet, and we got it out to the desert, and we stood it up. on the rail. Everything was ready to go. And as we're fueling it, the fuel leaked and it started a fire. And that moment is probably the most like a failure I've ever felt in this industry, because I'm standing there and I'm watching this fire just eat away at our rocket and knowing that there's nothing we can do and that it's not going to launch and that we put all this work into it. And, all these people flew to California to see it, and, they were there to support us. They took time out of their work and their day, and they spent money, and we had to shut it down and we couldn't launch. And I think had I not been present, it wouldn't have hit as hard. But literally standing there and watching this fire just like
Oh,
burn our dream up.
yeah. The fire,
Um,
the fact that it's fire, that was so irreversible. My God, I can't even
yeah,
imagine.
so that was rough. But
Mm.
in our culture book, this is to go back to that, we actually say when we face failure, when we burn, we learn. And I didn't expect it to be so literal the first time, but I had to remember that. And I was like, okay, well, what can we take away from this? What are the procedures we can take away? What are the notes that we can work on for the next launch? And when we got back into the office the next Monday, it instead of there being this dread or this like depression or this cloud over the office, we were all reinvigorated and we're like, okay, what are we going to do different? How are we going to do this? Let's look at different logistics. What company are we going to, maybe if we tighten the fuel when we do, and it was this real energy of like positivity and okay, how do we move forward and what can we do better? And nobody was thinking about the failure anymore. We
Mm.
processed it and we just kind of got back on track because it's a small team. So if we're not doing the work, nobody's doing the work. And
Mm.
so we had to just take that and turn it around. And now we're looking at potentially 2 launches this year, and we're making our third vehicle. Our third launch vehicle will be for those 2 launches, and we've gotten new funding because people, even though they saw that failure, still believed in us. And they said, hey, man, we know that that's a setback. It happens to everybody in the industry. Nobody gets it right every time. And they came in and they stood with us and they believed in us. And so just having that was reinvigorating. And we're like, okay, well, now we've got this behind us and we know what happens and we know that we can overcome it. And let's just go do it again. Like,
Mm.
and now, like I said, we're gearing up for launch, hopefully this summer. And then we've got one that we're looking at early 2024. So
Wow. Incredible.
yeah,
That's so exciting. It's so great to hear. You sound like you've got a very like-minded team, and as you said, a small team, which makes it even more important. That sounds like a failure and a biggest failure, biggest learning curve, all kind of parceled into one.
yeah, that was definitely a learning experience all around, um, for us, not just in how we can do the launch faster and more efficient and all the little things that we can do to set it up better, but also in how to face and overcome that failure, because it's not going to be the first time. I mean, it's not going to be the last time. Um, you know, that's unfortunately the reality of the rocket industry. Uh, scrubs are going to happen. Explosions, unfortunately, are going to happen. Fortunately, we didn't have that issue. No one got hurt. We recovered all 4 payloads and got them back to their owners safely. So it wasn't as bad as it could be, but
Mm.
just having that first real failure and being like, okay, now that that's out of the way, if it happens again, we're good. We know how to deal with it, and we can move on.
Mm.
And I think that was important because it was, you know, I'd rather it happen the first time than like the fourth or fifth time and really have that momentum behind us and think, oh, we're invincible, and then
Mhm.
this crush to your ego comes in.
Yeah,
So kind of having it happen the first outing was like, okay, we got it out of the way. We can't possibly have it go any worse than this. Let's just go and do the next one and make it better. So
yeah. Absolutely. I think it's always better to fail early. That's something that I was told a lot, and I don't think I really understood until I got a bit older. I thought you're completely right in what you're saying there. Get the as we said, it's a learning curve, and you all clearly wanted to come back and kind of grow and learn from that. I know. So kind of spoken about a couple of achievements there. I know you've got some coming up, doing some incredible things. But so to date, on the other side of the fence, what is your biggest achievement, would you say? What are you the most proud of that you've achieved so far?
it's to be honest, it's kind of the same
Yeah.
same event. We I'm in the office most of the time. My job isn't really a field job per se, and we do our manufacturing in Florida, so I don't really get to be in the hands-on parts of it very often. And so
Hmm.
seeing our rocket that we finally got built, and it was 34 feet and it stood up on the rail and it's towering over our whole team, and that was kind of our biggest achievement for me, just to see the realization of all this work and put hands on it and know that it was like a real thing and have it
Mm.
be there. Um, but also to see the way that my team recovered everything, and how they just kept pushing forward. They weren't going to let that stop them. And now we're at a point where we're going to grow this year and bring more team members on, and just seeing something that could have really just shut everybody down and watching them take it and grow it instead has been awesome.
Mm.
I'm
Absolutely.
very excited.
Yeah. I think it sounds like it was a very kind of teachable moment that I think I guess a lot I'm sure a lot of your team members, if I asked them that question, would have given, would have retold me the kind of the similar story. Um, I love that I've never had someone give the same um instance for both, but I actually think that's very poetic in a way. I think that is the essence, really, isn't it, of what you would hope to get out of a failure is, it sounds like it kind of brought you all closer together. And if anything, it kind of ignited the drive and the passion in you more to think, okay, what went wrong? Let's come back and let's make it work this time. And I love the kind of, the way you talk about your whole team and as the collective and how you've got all these kind of different skills. And as you said, the people in the different departments that contribute to the success of the overall mission. That reminds me of something else I would really love to hear from you. I think, again, in
Yeah.
the interest of kind of making this, giving kind of teachable moments to people listening who are, looking to take their next steps and kind of progress through the industry, specifically with the kind of route you've taken into the industry. I know you've always, as you said, you've always kind of been interested in space and science and had this love for the kind of industry, but you've taken a relatively unconventional route into the industry. As you said, you were working in the comic book store, you were a barista, but you still managed, a series of events still led you to where you are today. So, what advice would you give to someone from either a technical or a non-technical background who are looking to enter into the space sector in 2022 or beyond? 2023. That's terrifying. 2023, sorry.
No, you're good. This is only my second interview, so been terrified this entire time, and I know I've made several faux pas. That's you're
Oh,
fine.
not at
Um,
all.
no, I think really the best in like the best advice I could give them is to really put themselves out there. Um, Today in the age of social media, and I know not all of it's great for young
Mm,
people to be a part of, by any means, but there are so many people who are available now through social media, and they will respond to you. Um, and I've gotten responses from heads of industry and space who have never heard my name before just because I messaged them and we've had discussions, and I haven't met anyone who's not open to that. If they need to find a way into like a scholarship or a mentorship or just to know that there's a community where they are, there's so many ways to just put yourself out there and network now. And I think that's really important, especially for someone who's young and unsure, to know that there is this community there, and in the there's people there that support their ideas. Because when you're young and you tell people, oh, I'm going to be part of space, you're probably going to get laughed at a couple of times. And it
mhm,
it happens now as an adult when people are like, what do you do? And I'm like, well, I work in a rocket company. And they're like, yeah, okay. Like, what do you really do? And I'm like, well, that kind of is what I really do.
mm,
It's they need to know that it's possible and not just this kind of silly idea. And so, I mean, if I just went to an event last week and it was more adult oriented, but it was an event for the International Women's Day celebration, and the chairwoman of the entire FCC was there. That's one of the most powerful positions, in America, and she's 10 feet
mhm,
away talking to all these younger women, and you could just walk up and say hi, and that's an opportunity that, not everyone's ever going to have, but it was an open, free space event, and I could just go and meet these people, and then I'm making these network connections. And, in a lot of areas, that's not necessarily available physically. And fortunately, we live in an age where a lot of these events can be attended virtually, especially
mm.
post COVID. And so you can still be part of it. You can still get out there and talk to these people and get your name out there and start to make these connections and find your mentors and be a part of these programs. Um, and I think that's really what it is you've got to develop this kind of fearlessness to just get yourself out there, because once you do, like, the rewards are immeasurable.
Mm. Absolutely. That is something, so that's a really common theme that we hear from our guests on the podcast. And I think it's something that would surprise a lot of people that aren't in the space sector or are looking to join and have kind of a preconception. I can imagine a lot of them would have kind of accurate preconceptions, because I think maybe looking back, maybe I did, because I remember joining and I was speaking to all these people, and and I thought, oh, I kind of assumed that they would be really busy, really, wouldn't have time to talk to me, wouldn't have time, would kind of delegate it to someone maybe beneath them in the company. I didn't, and then I was speaking to these people that were so high up in these incredible, massive companies that were just so down to earth. I felt like I was talking to just, just like a friend, or just someone I just met, someone, and the way that they are so passionately asking people to kind of get in touch. And it's a lot easier to get in a room with very important people in the space sector than I think a lot of people might think, because they want people to succeed. They want people to kind of get in on this vision that they've been so lucky to be successful in. And the amount of people we've had on the podcast when it gets to kind of these kinds of questions, and they say, if anyone wants to reach out on LinkedIn for some professional, personal mentoring, the list goes on. And I say, I kind of think, oh, you're going to make a bit of a joke, say, oh, you're going to have a few messages after this. and they go, yeah, but this is how you spell my name on LinkedIn. I think, they're going, please get in touch with me, even if it's just for a chat. Because if you're enthusiastic, I want to work with you and I want to help you. And I think, as we said, whether you're technical or non-technical, as long as you're enthusiastic and you can show up when you can to kind of seize these opportunities which are available to people. If you can be there, as we said, you can even be there virtually. There's just so many opportunities and incredible people that you can speak to and share their expertise and learn from them and everything they've got to teach. And then you never know, you could end up in the same position as them one day.
Yeah, I fully agree. And I'll throw my hat into that ring. If anyone wants to reach out to me, I am on LinkedIn. By all means, do so. I love to answer messages, and if I don't have the answer, I'll try to direct you to someone I've met who does.
Mm.
But that is, yeah, it's one of the things that I love most about the space industry and the community that breeds is that I haven't met anyone who isn't that passionate about their work. If you get them to talking about it, they will talk about it at length. And it's great. And a lot of these events, I'll hesitate to introduce myself for a while and just walk around to listen to everyone speaking because they're so engaged in the conversation and so excited to tell you what they're working on. And it's just cool to take that in and just to hear, like 15 different stories and see that everyone there is on the same page and they're like, oh, what do you do? Oh, you're into this. I know somebody I could introduce you to them and this person. And everybody that I've met so far is that excited about what they do and they're that passionate to tell you about it and to help you either in what you're doing or introduce you to someone who can help you with it or make this connection with this other company. And like you said, there's not really that ego. Even if it's someone who's very high up in the company, they're willing to talk to you because they're excited about what they do and they're excited that you're interested and they want to foster that interest. um,
Mm.
so it's really kind of cool to have that kind of community feel to it.
Mm. Absolutely. I think that's a great kind of closing piece of advice to, start the conversation, join the conversation wherever you can. If it's, like we said, reaching out to someone on LinkedIn, whether that is maybe in person at kind of a conference or an event, you never, and I think this is especially true within the space sector, just getting over whatever is stopping you, kind of holding you back from starting that conversation could absolutely be the catalyst for the rest of your life because some of the people I've ended up in conversations with in the sector absolutely just blows my mind. And I think if you find these kind of situations where you can speak to people and be in a room with them, or as we said, even if it's over LinkedIn, you never know who you're going to end up speaking to and the kind of passion and the connections that they are going to want to, share with you and kind of give you to boost you up. I think, the people that you're going to be speaking to are going to see an element of themselves in you. And I think as soon as people kind of see the passion that people have when they're just starting out in, they just want to do anything they can to help them. And they will connect you with everyone they know that could possibly have any help. And then when you speak to those people, they'll pass you on to further people. And that's like, you can just build a connection, you can build a network within the space sector, I think, quite quickly as I said, just by starting the conversation. So yeah, I think that's a really, really valuable bit of advice, as we said, for people from either technical or non-technical backgrounds who are listening to this and hoping to find themselves in, a position like yours one day.
Yeah, and I'd love to help them get there. I mean, like I said, reach out to me, email, LinkedIn, um, through our I run all of our social media right now. So if anyone's on Facebook or Twitter, Instagram, if you message any of those accounts, you'll get me.
Oh, perfect.
I run all of that right now by myself. So I'm available many different ways in case anyone has any questions.
Yeah. So anyone listening, reach out to Mike for a chat on the RocketStar social medias. We're going to be tagging you guys across all platforms when this
Oh,
goes live. So people are going to be able to get straight to you. And I'm sure you're going to be having a few eager space enthusiasts in your inbox looking for some further advice.
nice. Look forward to it.
Well, Mike, I really appreciate you taking the time out to speak with me. This has been a kind of a new perspective that I've never spoken about these kinds of questions as someone in the kind of job that you have before. So I've really loved hearing your thoughts on this. And I think, yeah, you've just got your background on this has just given you a really unique perspective, which has been just so great to hear about. So yeah, really appreciate you joining me today.
Well, thank you guys so much, and I'm so honored and privileged that you reached out and asked me to be a part of this. After looking over the previous guest list you've had, I was like, wow, I'm in some pretty great company. So
You're part of the crew now. You're part of the crew. And we are so grateful for you reaching out and letting us know that you enjoyed Project IDD. That was sent into our group chat, I think, quite late on our end. It was probably an 11 p.m. message. Everyone, but we were all so touched by your message. It was such a lovely thing to hear. So really glad that we kind of got to have this conversation, start a relationship between EVONA and RocketStar. I think we're very aligned in a lot of ways. So I think there's, yeah, a great kind of collaboration to be had there in the future.
yeah, I hope so. And I really look forward to any way that I can help you guys out and, Rocket Star as a company. Um, I think it could be a very great partnership going forward. So,
Yeah, absolutely. I completely agree. I'm sure we will be speaking in the future then.
all right. I look forward to that too.
Yeah, me too. Thanks so much, Mike. Enjoy the rest of your day.
Thank you, Maya.
Bye.
Bye.